My mom asked me that question. How did it feel? It's a good question. You know what? You got to embrace it. Even when I was away from Nebraska, I'm always going to love Nebraska. And I'm happy to be here. But at the end of the day, I understand there's a business. And the business is to win. And I understand that. They're not going to keep me here because I played at Nebraska. They're going to keep me here because I can win. But listen, I'm loving it. I'm loving being back, reuniting with a lot of old friends. But I think, I like the way things are right now.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast with Dave, Honke, Boomer, and Redcast Rob.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, David Gaspers, and I'm with Honke.
Redcast Nation has grown to over 17,000 followers, and I just want to thank you all for the support over these 5 years. Go Big Red.
5 years, that's all been, huh? I'll be damned.
It's glorious.
Also with Boomer.
Well, I'd just like to proudly announce that after round one of the AFL, St. Kilda, North Melbourne, and Honke's own Richmond Tigers all lost the first round. So our sports fandom is proceeding as always. So hurrah, everyone.
Yeah, it's on par for all of our sports teams, it feels like.
Go Bruce.
Also with Redcast Rob.
Well, guys, after my entire podcasting career, I can't say that, after our interview with Sip last week, I've never seen anything like that with the number of people that have listened to us. I've just never seen anything like that. Nope, not in all my time as a podcaster.
You've had a very short life as a podcaster, Rob.
Yeah.
That is true.
Well, I mean, we have ambitions to be like, the worldwide leader of,
Husker
Nebraska
sports.
Football podcasts. And maybe we're not that far away. I don't know for certain, Honke, considering we have 17,000 followers. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, well, at least within Redcast Nation social media, probably a couple of duplicates in there, but we don't get into that.
Well, I have 6 different Twitter accounts, 4 different Facebook accounts. Sometimes I have an entire Twitter conversation with myself with 4 different accounts, so it's awesome.
That explains a lot, to be honest with you. It really does.
Yeah, well, nobody else will listen to me.
Well, Honke, I know that we had a great interview there last week with Steven M. Sipple, the Lincoln Journal-Star, and we've got another interview coming up this week, right?
Yeah, tomorrow night, mark your calendars, Redcasters. At 8:30, we will be talking with Tyler Kai, Associate Athletic Director, Leadership Gifts and Capital Projects. And so there'll be some, the Go Big project going on the north side of the stadium and everything. There's a lot going on right now. And, of course, Rob, as usual, our Redcast promo code.
Oh, yeah. So if you're on, if you go to Herd App Media and go to, if you want to subscribe to Hail Varsity, or you want to purchase one of these cool hats, or pretty soon we're going to have some really cool Redcast merchandise and some stickers available. If you want to order any of that, you go into herdat.com and enter Redcast at checkout, and you'll receive $10 off the first year of your subscription to Hail Varsity. But then, like I said, go in there and buy up all of our merch for us. I know a couple of things have actually already sold out. So at least that's what it says on the site. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means, but it's sold
those
out.
Hats that, like the one you're wearing right now, is going fast.
Well, Honke bought one and so did I. So,
yeah, 3 of your burner accounts.
We had a production run of 5.
It's called par levels, Dave. You don't want to over order anything because you don't want to just be sitting.
Boomer, you're the economist here. Like, it's a scarcity. That's a thing, right? Or
it's kind of like diamonds. The De Beers diamond cartel kind of keeps an artificial scarcity to make them bigger demand than there actually should be for them. So yeah, people are snapping them up. Every chance they get, keeps that price high. So
right, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, Honke. Well, I think we're going to talk a little football, a little basketball, and baseball. But let's start with some scarlet-colored glasses.
Yeah, well, we did the tweets of the week, and today was media day for practice, and they're back after having their week off for spring break. And so we have a couple different tweets here. One from Steven M. Sipple, a good friend of the Redcast that was on last week. The clubhouse leaders in Nebraska's punt return competition this spring are Trey Palmer, Tommy Hill, and Brody Belt. Said Brody's a natural punt returner. He's a natural kickoff returner. or kick returner and an off returner. I really like where those three guys are at, Bill Bush said. And Boomer is our special teams coordinator, so he can talk about what an off returner is in a little bit. Hale Varsity had one on punter Brian Buschini talking about kicking outside on Tuesday, and it was really cold and windy today. And Bush talked about how that's helpful to get them training in those kind of conditions. And then last but not least, Brian Christopherson wrote about a guy who keeps coming up from the QB, from the special teams, and from the wide receivers coach is Brody Belt.
Brody's a football player. Brody's probably the best football player on this team. You know, when you overall you talk about football player, I think he's a football player. He's smart. He's got high football IQ. I think he can move. He can play Z. He can play R. He can play running back. He can do a lot of things. He can play special teams. So he brings a lot to the table. And I think, you know, we're excited to have Brody on our team. You know, so you know, I think the sky's the limit for Brody.
So I guess maybe, you know, we'll start with that here. You know, they're back at practice again. From those tweets there, Dave, I'll start with you here and I'll show them again. Anything, you know, kind of come off the page for you that's interesting?
Well, apparently it's Brody Belt. I mean, he's coming right off the assembly line, being a real football player. We don't know exactly what that means compared to the rest of the 100 and some guys out there. I hope they're all football players. But Boomer, I mean, maybe you could elaborate on the off returner. I'm guessing maybe that's where we only have like 10 guys on the field and he's off the field. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be far too common with our special teams for a scenario like that.
The last year, that's the off returner.
Yeah, no, what essentially, in a nutshell, the off returner is when you have the two guys backfielding the ball. You've got the one who's primarily going to be the focus to receive the ball if you know which direction the kicker is going to kick it, which also isn't a guarantee for us on special teams. But the off returner is the other guy back there, and his job's to make sure that the kick is fielded cleanly, and then, you know, to let the upper guys know where they need to go. And his job's to get there and make that, you know, first initial kind of, you know, lead the way and make that big key block to kind of spring everything out there for the actual guy that fields the ball and catches it. And it's essentially, yeah. So it's a very important part of the game. So especially in the kickoff return to have a good eye, know where the ball is and know where you need to make the block. So
Gotcha. So the off returner is your second best kick returner.
Doesn't necessarily have to be even a kick returner. It's just, you're the guy who can block, really, essentially. So, yeah.
Right.
Or at least know where he's supposed to be standing and where everyone's supposed to be anyway, which again hasn't been a guarantee for us. So
did like Michigan State have an off punt returner that caught it and returned it against us, or is this
yeah,
only
probably.
work on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
fair to say.
you said we're not quite sure always where the other team is going to kick it, but in our defense, we don't always even know where we're going to kick it. So
that's very
That's
true.
going to change this year, Rob.
Yeah. Let's.
Well,
You know.
and Bush today, you know, had a chance to talk quite a bit about, you know,
Not enough Kool-Aid
just
to
some of
convince me
his philosophy on it. And look, I mean, I love what he talked about. You know, it was a crappy day here in Lincoln. It was cold, it was rainy, it was windy, and he brought up kind of like how golfers, professional golfers, when it's a crappy day out like that, they get out onto the links so that they can practice in those kinds of conditions. And he said that basically the same thing here. We're going to practice. We're going to kick in wind and rain. And he wanted to get that team out there today. And Buschini, again, kicking the ball and hitting the roof. I mean, there seems like we have something different with our punter this year that we haven't had in previous years. And Boomer, you've hit on this a number of times over the last 5 years, that special teams kind of is important. So, you know, I'll take that as a net positive, at least through a couple of weeks of spring.
yeah, at least we seem to be once again saying we're doing the right things. So let's hope it actually translates to something on the field. But yeah, I think we've all known, you know, any of our loyal podcast listeners over, was it 5 years now, Honke? I think hopefully if they've learned anything, special teams is kind of important here and there. So, you know, special teams,
exactly.
folks. So let's see if it translates to something this year. So,
You know, that reminds me of a story when the Jerry World opened up for the Cowboys, you know, 2008 or so. I was down there at the time, and one of the visiting punters during a preseason game hit the scoreboard. And they're like, oh my goodness, this is a disaster. They put the scoreboard too low. This is always going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Have you heard of a punt getting, you know, knocked down by the scoreboard at Cowboy Stadium since?
No, but I think Alex Henry even hit it during one of the Big 12 title games.
Yeah. I mean,
so
it's quite possible. It's usually by intent.
It's not necessarily a good kick.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So I want Buschini to actually practice, like coffin corner kicks, for example, would be more exciting to hear than he's hitting the roof, because that means he's practicing that opposed to kicking the ball really high.
Yeah, and Bush actually referred to net yardage, and what it would take to get really good net yardage is kicking it, not out kicking your coverage. He doesn't necessarily want to see a guy kicking it 60 yards just for the sake of it and having a return with 20 yards open around him. I mean, he'd rather have it be a 45-yard kick with the gunners right on him. So, again, it was hearing a lot more philosophy there from him today than maybe I've heard the last couple of times. And he's, this is a big deal. Special teams is a big deal right now, and I'm buying into it. Okay. The other tweets of the week for the football go outside of just this team outside of Nebraska. But for one, we always talk about in-state recruiting. There's Malachi Coleman, and he has an offer now from the defending national champ. So, I mean, his offer list, if he's got Georgia, it's going to be anyone, right? I mean, anybody can be going after him. I still like our chances. I'm so appreciative and love having Mickey Joseph here, and I think that's going to make a huge difference for us. But that list is only going to grow for him, and so he's an important one for us. And then the other tweets have to deal with NIL. And we talked quite a bit about that last week with Sipple. And the first one was the competition for NIL, and this is from us. The competition for NIL is heating up across the college landscape. Case in point, on Wednesday, Urban Meyer was announced as the newest board member of The Foundation, an organization aimed at helping Ohio State athletes land name, image, and likeness deals. And then Big Game Boomer sent out one saying Tennessee just got a top prospect for $8 million. That's more than the entire coaching staff makes. It won't be long before we have an NIL salary cap in college football. I don't know if that's going to happen. And we've had text discussions amongst our group about that. There's a lot of things that go into it. But what's interesting is just how big of a change, cataclysmic change really has happened in less than a year since it went into effect. And one of the things that Sipple talked about last week, Dave, and I thought this was really interesting, I'm going to play the audio from it, is that he talked about how Trev has even told him that he's kind of prepping for a day where NIL might even get brought in-house. Let's play that right here.
Now, here's the big thing. I've talked to Trev about this stuff at length, Trev Alberts. What's really interesting to me is where this is probably going. I mean, there's pending litigation. You'd have to Google it, but I think where it's probably 3 years away where there will be, it'll be more uniform because the schools will be paying the money. I don't think we're too long from that happening, too far from that happening. I'd say 3 or 4 years. Then it's gonna get really strange. I think it'll be even more strange in some ways because there's a school of thought that it could be just football that's paying players, and the rest of the sports wouldn't. That's one school of thought. But what Trev's gearing up for is he's making a lot of financial decisions within the athletic department right now that are geared toward the eventuality of the school paying the players. So his whole line of thinking is if this comes to pass, which it could, then they better have, I don't know, I almost hate to put a number on, but I'd say in the $40 to $50 million range ready to roll. That's a lot. That's a significant amount of money.
Dave, I know both of our eyes went wide open as he said that. And the eyebrows go up. It's like 40 to 50 million, but also just the fact that look, there's no guarantee. I don't know that that's what's going to happen, but at least they're prepping for that. Can you see that happening in 4 or 5 years, like Sip was saying?
Well, I think Sip really hit the nail on the head there about, it being football only. I mean, in that scenario, football's breaking off from the NCAA, at least from a Power 5, structure standpoint. I mean, I don't know how else you get to that point. And that 45 to 50 million is a huge number. You had a tweet up there that I'm sure you'll get to about Tennessee paying $8 million potentially for their 5-star quarterback. And there's an article, I think, on The Athletic talking about how their foundation, their collective is trying to build up a war chest of 25 to 30 million annually to recruit with, right? That's happening already. So I guess that number doesn't sound so outlandish once you start to actually roll it into it. university structure. The bigger question or bigger questions is really actually how that all happens, right? Because I mean, it just can't. I don't know how it functions today like that. I mean, it could get there. It feels like it might take a little bit longer than 3 years, but
Well,
yeah.
Boomer, we just need some guidance from the NCAA on this, on how to set that up, and everything will work just fine, right?
Well, sure, absolutely, and they've been so proactive and forthcoming with ideas and guidance, to start with this whole thing, which is how we ended up with
Just
NIL
a
the way it
beacon of
is.
hope, really.
Yeah, I think Dave's probably hit it right on the head that, if and when this does happen, kind of the way Sipple suggests, is that it is going to be a scenario where football has separated itself from the rest of the sports, because it's just, you don't see how you could do this with all the other sports. And then, like you said, the Power Fives may just have to do this separately. We talked about it with Sipple. I mean, if you're a UTEP, how do you compete with this? I mean, you're already behind the 8 ball with so much in terms of, recruiting and facilities and coachings and just that arms race in general. How do you even, you're not even on the same field anymore when it comes to now we're spending,
You don't have
30 to 40 to
money
50
do
million
it.
dollars recruiting players. Yeah, it's just, you're playing a different game at this point. I mean, this is, essentially minor league pro ball at that point is what it is. It's totally different. And I think what you might end up seeing is something like, maybe do you start considering the football players employees of the university? That's how something like this could go.
Right.
And then it opens up its own questions of,
Employees.
insurance and all those other things and unionization. But that's where you could get the limits and the salary caps and so on and so forth in the
You
sport.
can't get a
Because,
salary cap today.
yeah, right now you can't have one, just the nature of it so decentralized. But if you did say, all right, the football team are now employees of the university, we all agree we're going to have this kind of structure, that's where you start seeing some of those things, I think. So
Yeah, that was producer Skip's point, I think, in one of those texts, was that, they can't unionize right now. So there's no collective bargaining agreements or anything. They can just go out and NIL, it's completely Wild West right now. But, the thought of football being taken outside of the NCAA, isn't that crazy of a thought right now? Because think about what's happened in the last couple of years with COVID. We've already learned what the NCAA has control and not control over. They don't control the bowls. They don't control scheduling, and they don't control the playoff. So when they came in and shut down March Madness, they did that because the NCAA owns that. When they came in and shut down College World Series because of COVID, they own that. They couldn't do that when it came to football. Football already was outside the NCAA's purview when it came to that. And they just, it was up to each individual conference for how you wanted to schedule or don't schedule your games. So, you start to put some dots together here. I mean, it wouldn't be crazy to think that could happen. Now, again, there's how is a big thing. I don't know how you do that, and that's way above my pay grade, but it was just interesting, I thought, when Sip said that. And it's something to keep an eye on, I think, because these numbers, the $8 million for one guy, the $25 million a year, Dave, that the Athletic wrote about, those numbers aren't going to sound crazy in a couple months. Dave or Sipple last week was telling you that, Nebraska is far ahead in the NIL game. And I think we are, but I don't think it'll take long for other teams to catch up either. And there's going to be money thrown around.
Well, there's 36 collectives amongst 29 schools, I think is what the number I saw on that article about the Tennessee player there. And the 8 million is spread out actually through his junior year. So it's closer to like, what is that? Like,
2.5 a year.
2.5 a year. Yeah. And plus there was like some kind of like a signing bonus as well, I think, that was included in that, which, my Lord, I mean, this is a high school
the
kid.
Fourth best quarterback in the class.
Yeah. But I mean,
overall, what do you think Arch Manning's going to get if this guy just got 8 million, Honke? I mean, Arch Manning will literally have
he'll get his own Papa John's franchise. I mean, this is
he's probably going to start getting paid in like how old is he now?
He'll be a senior in football this year in high school.
Yeah. So is he going to sign a deal now? Like, I mean, I mean, it's like to the point. It's like to the point now where, you're going to see some of these kids a lot like the ones that are showing like commitments in like their sophomore, junior year to colleges, right? Like you're going to start seeing kids in high school walking around and, driving brand new cars.
And so different states have different rules on that high school wise. Texas notoriously, obviously, does not allow their high school players to profit. That's why yours went to Ohio State. Other states are different. So, I mean, that could be interesting.
Yeah, which is ironic because Texas lets people do everything else. So.
Pretty much. Yeah, we did have a few NIL-related questions while we're here. First one I just kind of threw up there. Jeremy Brandt, any chance we can get a big enough NIL deal to get Cam to come back?
Which Cam?
I mean, yeah, is that Cam Mack? Is that Cam Taylor Britt?
You choose. I don't know. Just whichever
Cam
you
Mack.
like.
That would be a good one, David.
Or Cam Jurgens, maybe. That's
Newton. Is he
Cam
employed
Newton?
right now?
Yeah.
He might have some eligibility left. I don't know.
Well,
You never had
Cam
it to begin with, Boomer.
Yeah, Cam Newton had good NIL deals back in 2009 or whenever it was.
I don't think we can get Cam Jurgens back, as far as I can tell. But hey, you never know.
No, probably not. And then loyal listener Ken asked, will NIL and the portal shift college football back to being a more regional sport in terms of recruiting? And you have a better shot at keeping the 500-mile radius kids in the program?
I don't know. I mean, is the dollar worth more in Nebraska than it is in Alabama? What's the exchange rate right now? I mean, the cost of living's better. I mean, I guess the NIL deals might be better if they're already locally known from a high school perspective, right? You know, I could see Malachi Coleman might be able to draw bigger numbers staying home because he already has name recognition here, where in Alabama, he's, would just be getting into a bigger, fishbowl. I mean, I could see that. Yeah. But, I mean, I think it could be a little bit of both.
I think a better question would be: is this gonna help us recruiting outside of the 500? You know what I mean? To some of those like 4 and 5 stars.
I mean, to your point
Dave, don't agree with me. That throws me off.
No, I mean, I think that's what Sip was getting at last week, and I mean, like, this is going to continue to play out. But I mean, and maybe we're ahead of 90% of the programs. Maybe Tennessee's one of them that might be ahead of us because they're trying to have $25 million of,
and they'll still finish third or fourth in their own conference.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Which we are. I shouldn't talk.
I mean, right? But I mean, I think what Sip's getting at there is that I think we are very active on, trying to have something like this collective, being able to fund significant recruiting efforts and player retainment efforts. And, I mean, we might not be too far away from seeing our first, $1 million signee. I don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's different from, trying to bring a coach in here when it comes to the cost of living. Like Sipple said, that a lot of these guys, the volleyball players that are getting free housing, I mean, cost of living isn't even really a part of this. If you're free is free, right? I mean, if that's what comes with your NIL deal is you get a car or you get a free place to live. I don't know that that's really going to affect someone from inside or outside the 500 miles. But I think your point, Dave, about if you're an insider inside the 500 miles and you have a connection already to the state, that might be able to bring you some more money here than it would somewhere else, just because your local name recognition. All right, Jim Cobb, what NIL will do regionally for Nebraska? Our Big Ten teams nearby, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, who won't have the NIL money to offer that Nebraska will.
Yeah, I mean that seems to be the case right now. Let's see if that holds up. We've talked last week about how Wisconsin seemed to have been unable to put together a package for Caleb Williams to make him a viable candidate there at Wisconsin. I mean, it feels like the storyline would be that the alumni base and the boosters at Iowa and Minnesota aren't as enamored with this idea as maybe folks in Nebraska are. But all it takes is a couple deep pockets at any of those, booster clubs to change that. So we'll see. I mean, I think that could be the case.
Well,
I think every team's
not really in the recruiting model for any of those schools anyway. I mean, those schools literally build their programs off a lot of 3 and 4 star recruits, right? That stay for 3-4 years at a time, right? Like,
sure, but I think their point here is that, I mean, opposed to saying we need to go get 5 stars across the country or even 5 stars locally. I mean, this could be a simple advantage of let's saying that we are going after the same guy that Wisconsin's going after, or Iowa or Minnesota, which happens all the time.
Yeah.
And we can put together an NIL package for $200,000 for this guy for the next 3 years, and they can't put together anything. Maybe that makes a difference.
Yeah. That's true. Like, maybe we could have gotten what's his name's son, who plays for Iowa now.
No, that wouldn't have happened.
No. but Wisconsin, Wisconsin's had some issues getting NIL in place. I think in a place like Iowa, it'll be interesting with a guy like Ferentz as coach, old school guy. does he embrace it or not? And we've talked a little bit about Iowa in the past where they haven't had a lot of players leave for the portal, so they haven't had to bring in a lot of players from the portal either. Now, if that starts to change, what if Iowa starts to lose players because, hey, I can go and make NIL somewhere else? Existing players, not just high school recruits, but an existing guy leaves because I can go somewhere else, Nebraska or elsewhere, and make more money. I mean, then now you got to start playing the game. And, how willing is he to embrace that? I don't know.
Yeah, you combine this with the transfer portal and the immediate eligibility, one-time immediate eligibility rule, and you can really, it's a free agent market for players from lower conferences or other teams that you can draw from.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's Dave, should we move on to Nebrasketball?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some more tweets of the week here from Nebrasketball.
Yeah, so let's start off with wasn't a surprise that Bryce McGowan's did officially put himself into the NBA draft. And here's a tweet from Donovan Williams, Lincoln kid that went down to Oklahoma State, but is in the transfer portal himself. We'll see what happens there. But he said, "Go be great, Bryce McGowan's." And then speaking of transfer portal and Lincoln kids, Sam Greizel, he was at North Dakota State for the last 4 years. He tweeted out, "Dreams to reality. There's no place like home. Let's rock Husker Nation." Committed. So he is back in Lincoln for next year. Also today, we learned that Eduardo Andre has put himself into the transfer portal, Dave. So we're starting to kind of get a little bit of an idea of what the roster is immediately looking like. And we also are getting a little bit of an idea of the coaching staff. Doc Sadler and Matt Abdelmassih are both have been both let go from the staff as Hoiberg starts to do his restructuring.
Yeah, it's a huge shift, right? I mean, Hoiberg hasn't coached in college ever without Matt Abdelmassih on his bench. He has been essentially his recruiter, player personnel guy this whole time, and the entire roster has been built with his connections with AAU and high school coaches, et cetera. And so, I mean, it's going to be really intriguing to see how Fred rebuilds this. The newspaper articles talk about how he's going to try to save the class with Blaise Chiata and Romeo Lloyd Jr. and others. And it could be really tough. Those are all Abdelmassih guys. It's not impossible, I guess, but I wouldn't say it's likely. I think they all have other options. But I mean, maybe Fred has had a better, connection with him over the last month or two, and maybe it's still the right spot for him. It's going to be really intriguing. It'll be intriguing to see who he brings in onto his coaching staff. It's also intriguing that who's stayed, right? Because Gates is still here. Is that right?
We haven't heard any movement from Gates.
That was the most obvious one, I would feel like, but maybe not. I don't know. It's intriguing.
Well, his brother, I think, he coaches at Missouri, if I remember right. And there was some thought that he might make the move to go coach with his brother. I think it's at Missouri. I could be wrong.
I don't know if it's Missouri, but I think that's the right storyline. His brother was going to be a Power 5 head coach. And it was like, yeah, it makes sense. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. And then what players end up coming back, we've talked about Walker. We think, good chance that he's going to come back. Does Trey, we didn't think Bryce would, but would Trey be able to come back? I mean, that's, and then Wilcher's, an important piece of this. And I'm sure that he's probably going to be back next year. So and then getting guys like, is it Breidenbach, the freshman, getting him healthy and getting him back, there is a bit of a core of a team that we can bring back, which is important. We just can't keep completely flipping an entire roster over from scratch every single year and think that we're going to have any kind of success. But Boomer, anything on basketball from the from the stands?
No, nothing yet. No, everyone was just kind of still talking NIL, but yeah. So it was a rapid shift. They'll catch you on it. So yeah.
I'm sure.
I didn't even know Nebraska had a center on their team. So.
Well, we don't play like we have one. It's a 5-out system, Rob. As
Walker,
you know.
Walker was the closest thing to a center I thought we had on there. So,
yeah, that's right.
Well, we're not going to be, talking a lot more Nebraska ball probably in the next few shows. So this is kind of closes out the season a little bit, and
mercifully,
yeah. And then, but I mean, the next thing is within the next week or so, I'm sure we're going to start hearing new coaches being hired. And transfer portal wise, do we have any like timelines? Like when do we think we're going to have a more finalized roster in place? I mean, is that something that can go deep into the summer, or in the next couple of weeks?
It can go pretty deep. I don't know the exact schedule, but it's very different than football, where you have just a few signing periods. It's much more wide open. And so, I don't have a good answer on that one. I think it's pretty fluid, though.
All right. So whoever we end up hiring, I'm sure they're also going to have some players, just like Abdul Massey would. I'm sure the new coaches that would come in would also have some connections and be bringing in some of their own guys. And that might be
the concern there, obviously, with any coach you bring in is, they're going to come in for that coach. You're going to have to trust. There's got to be a trust factor between Fred and the new coach, that fit is going to work. All those things. There's a lot of work to get done to put together a roster that we think could be even remotely competitive in the Big Ten next year. They had 9 teams in the tournament this year, as we know.
Well, that we're going to get to that in a second. How important, though, Dave, do you think it is to get a coach, like at least one assistant coach? I guess Gates came from Northwestern. He was there for like a season or so, if I remember right. But how important is it that we get one of these assistants that would have Big Ten experience?
It's a good question. On the surface, you'd say that sure wouldn't hurt to understand what it's going to take to win in this league. He did have something like Doug Sadler, who did coach in the league. It wasn't extensive, but 1 year is enough to figure out what you have to do to win in the Big Ten. And Gates was already there too. So it's still a little surprising that they haven't been able to put that together. But I would say that's probably a clear advantage for any assistant coach candidate.
Hey, Boomer, there's another question from Ken McCone on there about will Fred focus on not letting the best players in Nebraska get away, or will he keep recruiting hired guns who can't shoot worth a blank? And Dave, actually, I think you'll have the best answer for this, because this is one of the things that we've talked about 100 times. But he brings in these guys and they can all shoot. If they're transfers, things like that, he's bringing them in because they can shoot. That's his MO, right? Like being able to hit those outside shots. And then what happens when they get to Nebraska?
Yeah, statistically speaking, they should be good shooters. They were shot well wherever they were at, whether that was in high school, a JUCO, or some other Division I program, and then they or another country, and then they come here and they can't hit the broadside of a barn. So I don't know why that is, but
do we need
think
better backdrops, maybe, like in the arena? Like, is it the shooter's eye? Something's off with that, because there's some arenas like Steph Curry, right? He has problems in Madison Square Garden every year, like, and sometimes
she had problems everywhere else too.
Yeah,
but
right.
That's the point.
Or you get Teddy Buckets, who is making everything, at the JUCO level, comes to Nebraska, can't hit anything, and then goes to New Mexico State and takes them to the second round.
Well, he couldn't hit anything the other night, so that's his thing. Is he's either on or he's
he hit 37, and then he goes cold, right? But and he had the last game he played in Nebraska, he had what 39 or something?
40, I thought maybe.
I thought it was like 42 or 43 or something.
It was one point short of the record. Is that right?
Yeah.
Was it Bayakowski that still had the record? But I think that Ken's point is about Nebraska players getting away. We got to start winning.
Yeah.
And it's a chicken egg thing there a little bit, right? But Chucky Hepburn gets recruited to Wisconsin, and he goes off and he plays in a top 10 team that's highly seeded conference, Big Ten team that wins a share of the conference. Isaac Trout is getting recruited by a national championship coach. You just got to start winning, and then you're going to have better luck at getting those guys. You'd like to think that they want to play at home at Nebraska, but they don't.
Well, there has to be, you have to show them something on the court too. And it's not just NIL, there has to be more than just that to attract these kids. Salas going to Gonzaga. You have obviously Creighton's gotten a couple kids now, in the last few years too. But I think getting Sam Greizel back, it's interesting that's, the first domino to fall with the roster for next year. And that's a Lincoln East kid coming back from North Dakota State, where he was, an all Summit League level player. And then Donovan Williams, I'm just curious. I don't know. Maybe I'm making something out of nothing, but he was committed to Tim Miles and then decommitted when basically Teddy Allen committed. So it felt like a swap 1-for-1. And Donovan Williams ended up going down to Oklahoma State and playing there for 2 years. And now he's in the portal too. Maybe we can get him back.
Yeah, I take him.
We talked about Big Ten play and what it was going to take to have success in the Big Ten. But we also had a few more tweets in the week that are specific to Big Ten in the NCAA. And we are sometimes I think Boomer and I running the account, we troll some of the other schools just because our teams haven't been very good. I get it. But the Big Ten, man, I mean, we get 9 teams in this year, and last year, whatever it was, 8 or 9, and we can barely get teams into the second week. And so we were struggling as a conference. And here's Mike Farrell. If Purdue doesn't win the Big Ten, should lose all berths next year. The conference has been awful. Inside the Hall, which I think is a Indiana show, Kevin Warren needs to get to figuring out why the Big Ten keeps underachieving in March. Today has been a complete disaster for the league. And then Dennis Schutte with the Saturday Traditions, he said Big Ten regular season versus Big Ten in the March Madness. And there's some cartoons that I don't understand.
That's from Space Jam.
That's from Space
there
Jam.
You go.
Honestly.
All righty.
Yeah.
Very good.
And if it's not a Police Academy movie, so you haven't seen it, that's okay.
I thought maybe it was Star Wars or something. I'm terrible with that stuff. You know that. Dave, I came down to Denver last weekend. We hung out, had a great time.
Yeah.
We watched a lot of basketball. Rob, Rob was with us too. I'm not neglecting you, Rob. We had a great weekend. Watched a lot of basketball. To all those tweets points there, the Big Ten's had a rough go at it, and I don't know why. I mean, look, I control them, but obviously Nebraska's not in it. Why? What is going on? Why is it just the reffing? You hear a lot about that, but is it?
Sure. I mean, like, it's interesting. I can't remember who had this series of tweets. Maybe you guys saw this as well, that they were kind of dissecting the Big Ten tournament, and it is the last tournament essentially before Selection Sunday, and maybe they should change that because maybe the some of the best teams are too tired because they played late on Saturday and then Sunday, and they have to turn around and play again on Thursday or something like that. I don't know. But the data was saying, well, actually, I mean, like, a fair amount of the Big Ten tournament champions have done fine in the tournament over the last several decades. So they didn't seem to have any statistical data backing up that theory that we should end the tourney earlier. I do think there's probably a lot more evidence to the fact that, I mean, like, the Big Ten promotes a different brand of basketball within the conference, and the refs allow a lot more physical play to occur in conference games. That directly impacts someone like Fred Hoiberg, who likes freedom of movement in his offensive system. And it doesn't play well to his goals of scoring a lot of points. And ultimately, sometimes that can work in regular season play, but then once you get to the NCAA tournament, NCAA refs are tighter on that, and ultimately the Big Ten teams are at disadvantage, right? Because there is more freedom of movement, there's more calls on Big Ten teams, and that impacts their performance. I mean, like, I would say this year, I mean, a lot of this is being made out of no one thought we were going to get 9 teams in this year. Last year, everybody thought Big Ten basketball was really good. There were some really high seeded teams, and they're expected to have a great tournament. We got 9 in this year, but keep in mind that included Rutgers,
Indiana,
and Indiana's play-ins, right? So literally they are on the cusp. You take those 2 out, we're down to 7. It's a very different.
That's still a large number
That's still a large number, but we also have 14 teams that all play competitive basketball here, and are trying to win. So I mean, like the play-in thing tilts that a little bit. I think in the numbers wise.
I agree with you too, Dave. Actually, on that as well as far as the style of play goes, because it's a lot of bang them under the basket type of play. Like that's why we talked about Walker. I'm a big fan of Walker because I like the way he plays under the basket. It's a Big Ten style of basketball, and a lot of these teams that they were losing to were able to just get out and break. I mean, the big joke during the Wisconsin game this week, right? Like take the under, because I think the over on that was like 135, right? Which is 135.
It barely got to 100,
and it barely got to 100. They even said it like in the first 5 minutes of the game. They said, "Well, folks, if you took the under on this, you might as well go cash that check now." And I mean, then it became a joke. Like by the time the second half started, first team to 40 is going to win, and sure enough, first team to 40 did win. Wisconsin lost that game, but it's just such a slow. I mean, you almost feel like they're trying to play kind of like the Hoosier style of basketball where no shot clock anymore. You know what I mean? It's just so slow. Pass, take the shot from inside the arc or whatever. I don't know. It just feels like such a slow down pace of play. And all you need is one team that's in better shape and can run the ball faster and, outscore them by 10, 15 points in that, because it's not Big Ten basketball. And you saw it a lot. I mean, what do they have left now? 2 teams? Is it
2 teams?
Purdue and Michigan, right? And Michigan was a team where nobody even thought they belonged. And here they are.
Preseason, they were expected.
Preseason they were, and then they lost to Arizona. But sorry, I had to throw that in there. But yeah, I mean, preseason they were ranked, and then they fell off the map. And then a lot of people thought they shouldn't have even made it after the Howard incident, right? So then, it's just, I don't know. It's the Big Ten's a huge enigma in the tournament every year, and give them 4 top teams and leave it at that every year from now on. Because
Dave, you're a North Carolina fan. You're happy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it got a little bit sketchy there. You left it about halftime, I believe, and you're like, "Oh, Carolina's got this." Carolina was up on Baylor at halftime around 14, 15 points. They actually extended that lead to 25, I believe. And Brady Manick, who was an OU transfer and it was just hitting everything, gets kicked out of the game with a questionable flagrant 2. Is definitely a flagrant 1. I feel the flagrant 2 was a little bit too.
That was a ridiculous. That was a ridiculous.
And they changed the game. Ended up going into overtime, but Baylor expended so much energy to get back in that game, outscoring Carolina, I think 38-13 in the last 10 minutes that they lost in overtime. So I'll take the Sweet 16, and that bracket's wide open. I don't know if you've looked at your brackets at all, but I mean, both Baylor and Kentucky are out of that. So it's Carolina, it's UCLA, it's Purdue, and St. Peter's. So, I mean, back to Big Ten, right? Because I know we're not a Carolina basketball podcast. I mean, we are all just saying, "Oh, it's a disaster for the Big Ten," but I mean, Purdue should be the favorite to make the Final Four out of that, right? So, I mean, does that change the perspective if somehow Purdue and Michigan make the Final Four and you have 2 of the last 4? Sure, right? So the tournament's still got a ways to go.
The SEC's struggled up to this point too. We're not the only conference.
Yeah.
And I guess when you have more teams in, you're going to have more teams out. I will say that I legitimately thought Iowa was going to go deep. I don't know that I thought they'd win it all, even though I had them winning my entire bracket.
You lost a significant free bet on Iowa.
I did. Free bet that I could have done. By
And
the way,
we were watching that game in an Iowa bar. All right.
Yeah.
That was probably the most satisfied I've been watching sports since 2020. I think that was probably, and I was really good. I didn't say a thing in the bar, man. I just had a big smile on my face watching that. It was such a beauty.
Yeah. Dave was getting me onto all the sports apps, the betting apps out there while I was in Colorado, and it was a ton of fun. And yeah, you get all these free bets and these, they're trying to build one of them. They give you $50 and you automatically get 50 extra. So I had to pay 50 and I got an extra 50 and then I just cashed out. So I walked home with 100 from that. I was like, that was easy, but I don't think that was their intention. But anyways, one of them was pick any game, and I picked Iowa just to win. And if they win the first game, then I would get $200 of free bets. And it was like the next game. I didn't want to wait for some.
It was like, are you sure you want to take Iowa Honke? And he's like, yeah.
I was like, come on, it's Richmond, whatever.
They've got this. Right?
Well, Honke, what was your quote after that game? Losing $50 was totally worth it. You looked at me and you said that, but you kind of kept your voice down because, again, we're sitting in Sports Column, which if people don't know, Sports Column is a bar in Denver. It's a sports bar in Denver that's an Iowa bar, but they also have one in like right next to the Iowa
It's in
campus.
Iowa City, yeah.
Yeah,
Is it in Iowa?
City.
Oh, is that why? Is that what that
Yeah.
is? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they have a bar in Iowa City, and then they have the bar in Denver because Denver has a huge Iowa contingency here too. So
Redcasters, this is something we've talked about this in the past, but during football season, and Dave, I'm planning to do it again next year or this upcoming season. It's one of the most unique settings in the country is Lodo area of Denver, that downtown area where I don't know. I've heard like Manhattan and maybe like Wrigleyville are similar to where you have a lot of transplants all in one spot. And so you have all of these viewing sites of like every team. Like we could literally go from bar to bar to bar. There's the Wisconsin bar right next to the Iowa one.
Right next to it.
And they're all so well themed. So, you go to a Nebraska bar and they're handing out runzas, but we've been to the swamp in the Rockies and the Gators are doing that. And you go and we've had cheese curds and we've done jump around. It's one of the neatest settings. And I'll try to do it every year and we'll always do it. I mean, it feels like you're tailgating in each town of each school. And, 15, 16 bars later at the end of the day, it's you feel like you do after a good tailgate, but it's always a lot of fun.
That's how Dave introduced me too. Like when I started going and watching Nebraska games at actually the Giggling Grizzly down in Denver, right? Like we used to go watch those on Saturdays with you and your wife Katie and myself and then after the game, like one of the traditions was Dave would find like whoever we played in the Big 10, or I think even the Big 12, they were still in the Big 12 when we first started. Dave would say, okay, let's go over to this bar and talk with the fans and just, tell them great job, whatever, win or lose. Like it was, and that was like, it was like this respect thing. And the funny thing is this bar that we'd watched, it was a Nebraska bar, but it was also a Michigan State bar. So sometimes you'd be getting like go Big Reds on one side of the bar and go white, go green on the other side of the bar. And it's not that big of a bar, but it was always a friendly environment. And that's the cool thing about Denver 99% of the time is that's just how it is. You can go and after the game, you can go shake hands with fans of the other team and all that. So, and that was fun to do on last Thursday too. So it was one of the slower St. Patrick's days, but I had a great time hanging out with you guys. That was fun.
Well,
thanks, Rob.
Well, Dave, let's what do you think? Should we talk a little baseball here?
Around the Van Horn. Let's talk about all things Husker baseball, including another debilitating weekend where after a 21-4 shellacking to the Islanders of University of Texas Corpus Christi,
or community college, as some people thought it was on Twitter. Yeah.
Which actually is on an island, that Rob has actually visited. And they only took 2 of 3 because we were able to beat them. What was the final score? 13-12 or something like that.
Yeah.
In the game we did win.
Yeah.
Not a pretty week, and we really need to figure out.
They won 4 in a row, didn't they? And then got blown out the next 2 days.
Well, yeah, they beat Omaha once, and then they had the sweep against New Mexico State, and then won the first game.
Yeah,
there.
Yeah,
but their starting pitching has just been, for lack of a better word, it's pretty much been trash the entire season. And you put yourself in a hole in baseball like that, and you're just digging to get out the entire time. It's not a recipe for success. Period.
Well, Dave, we have a tweets of the week for baseball too, and Nebraska baseball coach Will Bolt was in a dark mood after this one. Has he ever been part of a game like that in his coaching career? Bolt said no, never, nope, and that's in reference to Sunday's Game 3, 21-4 loss. This is what Cam Chick, the captain, had to say about it.
As a captain, how surprised were you with how today went?
This was a bad one. Probably one of the most embarrassing ones I've been a part of. Nothing went our way, and we didn't help ourselves out when we needed to the most. We were making the plays, weren't getting the hits. We had runners on, couldn't get them in. Anything that went wrong did go wrong for us. And as a captain, you kind of just got to go out there and lead by example and lead. But all of us, top to bottom, we just got to do a lot better than that because that was just embarrassing.
So that was Cam Chick talking with a rifle practice going on in the background, apparently.
Yeah, what was going on in the background there?
That was catch. That was the sound of the ball hitting the glove, which is something that the defense is having a hard time doing and throwing. to that, so we wouldn't recognize that sound very much. But yeah, that was the sound of a pitch hitting the leather glove.
I don't know.
Our pitching, they're really good at pitching in practice apparently, but not in the games. And you know what? They don't. I was way more positive going into the season, and I'll eat my hat on that too. I was like, give them time. But right now, man,
Well, Rob, to that point, I mean, I think this weekend is where you have to figure out how they could turn the corner, right? If they're going to do it, it needs to start this weekend at home versus probably the other top echelon program in the Big Ten, which is Michigan.
Yeah, because their game tomorrow was canceled because of weather.
Right. I'm just saying, regardless now, I mean, the idea of like hosting a regional, all those things are out the door, guys. That's not going to happen. Now you just got to figure out how can you make the NCAA tournament, and you do that by winning the Big Ten, right? Whether that's regular season or ultimately the conference tournament. That's how you're going to get in. Or finish very close to the top with a really good record, right? And because they're just not going to have the non-conference wins and the resume to do it otherwise, right? So start this weekend. If you can somehow win 2 of 3 versus Michigan at home, and then you just start, knocking off wins from there. But they got to figure out how to keep the scores within range and then have better clutch hitting.
Yeah, it's. Get those bats going, boys.
Yeah, and this is kind of just an important series, too. I mean, because some of the other teams that had good off seasons, like Maryland and Purdue, I don't even think they're scheduled. Do we even play them in the Big Ten this year?
Yeah, it does not sound.
I don't think we do, if I remember right. So, you don't have a whole lot of room to make up ground on those kind of teams just from an overall record perspective. So, yeah.
Right now, though, I mean, from a conference perspective, is a fresh start, right? I mean, that doesn't count.
No, it doesn't. But if you wanted to look good and get quality wins of some sort, yeah, those would have been chances to do it, and we don't even have those. So yeah, But Michigan, yeah, this is an important weekend. So just like I said, if you got to turn it around, it starts here. Otherwise, it could be a long conference season, I think, for baseball.
Yep. Yeah, I'm seeing Maryland's number 21, I think, right now in the polls. And the Baseball America one.
Yeah, I mean, I think
that's about it for the Big Ten. I don't know if we.
So, does it even make sense why we can't play everybody in the Big Ten in baseball? That just seems really odd to me. I never understood that.
A lot of other conferences have 27 or even 30, so we should at least have a couple more. I think the reasoning behind that, Boomer, for years was that there was not enough depth in the conference that actually you're lowering your RPI by playing a lot of conference games. And so they would have more non-conference road games that would actually help them out. So, I mean, I think that could be changing, and maybe we could justify at least another weekend series.
Well, at least they have a winning record at home. So maybe, if we can get a bunch of home games, right? They're 4-2 at home right now. So, and maybe that's what it's going to take here is just play a bunch of home games, right? They play.
Well, as far as I know, Rob, they'll probably have 12 Big Ten home games and 12 Big Ten road games. That's usually how it works.
But hey, if they can go, 10-2 at home and then go 500 on the road.
Well, here's the schedule. We have Michigan. We have a series with Michigan at home this weekend. We have one game at Creighton, series at Ohio State, game at Omaha in the middle of the week, at home against Rutgers for a series, then another Creighton game. We do play a series against BYU in a 4-game series against BYU in Lincoln. North Dakota State, a 1-gamer, 3 games at Indiana, Kansas State, Omaha home, 1 game each, Iowa home series, away series at Minnesota, at Illinois series, 1 game against Oral Roberts, and then Michigan State home series. To that point, doesn't look like we have Maryland on the schedule. I don't know. I mean, we just got to win games no matter what. But I don't think there's going to be.
That's my point here, I guess, guys. Is like, I mean, we're saying like, we're not going to
get matter who they play. They just need to win.
Yeah, they just need to win. And then, I mean, you finish as high in the conference as you possibly can. And you may have to, if you don't win the conference with that, you may have to go win the conference tournament. I mean, just that regardless of if Purdue or Maryland who apparently have the 2 best non-conference records, are on the schedule or not. It doesn't matter. Go win as many of these 24 Big Ten games as you can and take it from there.
Yep.
Sage advice right there. That's all I got.
Just drop the mic.
Well, hopefully you're listening. Just win as many as you can. All right, guys. Anything else before we get to parting shots? All right, let's change it up this week, and let's start with Redcast Rob.
I mean, my only parting shot is that the stickers came in. We've got some great T-shirts that we're either going to be selling, maybe giving away here coming up real soon. So when I'm in town for the spring game, find our tailgate. We're either going to be setting one up or, trying to set one up with some people that are already tailgating, and come hang out for a little bit and, enjoy some time with the Redcast. It's it's a spring game. So it's a Nebraska football game that we can't lose. And then afterwards, I think Honke and I are going to head over to Haymarket and watch the baseball team as we were just talking about with against Rutgers. So we'd love to just kind of hang out and shoot the stuff, I'll say, because this is a kid-friendly show, and see all you Redcasters out there.
Yeah, Redcasters, reach out to Redcast Rob or to the Redcast account on Twitter or gobigredcast@gmail. If you guys are coming down for spring game, we still are we want to do something. We don't know exactly what that is yet. We want to tailgate somewhere and maybe we can tailgate with one of you, have it be the Redcast tailgating, home there. So, and I know we're going to do a rapid reaction after the game too, Rob, like we did last year. So we'll do a rapid reaction after the spring game, but it should be a fun weekend.
Yeah, and I like I said, if you're having a tailgate and it's something that you do traditionally around the spring game, let us know because maybe we'll just come join you.
Yeah, we love to drink your beer. So
yeah. Well, and I won't even drink your beer because I don't drink anymore. So there you go.
Boomer, I think we may start a new over-under on how long Redcast Rob's parting take is.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive there too, and that was theoretically just one take, wasn't it? So,
theoretically one take.
Honky-ish? Is that?
Well, he goes for quantity, just sheer number of hot takes. This was just one long hot take.
So. I prefer to call it quality.
I wanted to do Honky last, so there was more action on the 3.5 to see if we could actually move the line. Boomer, let's have you.
Well, just a couple quick ones. Listener Ken was asking what I was drinking tonight, and like Rob, for Lent, I've sworn off liquor for the Lenten season. So this is just a mocktail. I don't have a name for it yet, but it's muddled some basil and honey together with a bit of pineapple juice, topped with ginger beer, and add some cherries and berries to it. So if anyone has a name for it, feel free to throw it in there. And I suppose once Lent's over, you can throw some rum in there and have something.
I was just going to say, Boomer, what alcohol would you throw into it to make it? Is it
probably rum or vodka would be pretty tasty in there once that's all over.
But, just call it the Redcast Rob.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, so.
The Lenten Boomer.
Yeah, that works too. So, nice. Yep, and also looking forward to the interview with Tyler Kai, so he can give us a full breakdown of the plans for a jumbo steam statue and the plaque they're putting up for Baron von Raschke for the Husker Hall of Fame. So
I hope Tyler knows.
Looking forward to those answers.
We actually are literally going to ask him about the jumbo steam statue tomorrow night.
Yeah, we need that. And,
on the list
and
of
Baron von Raschke in there, Rob. So I'll send you all the info. So
thank you. Yeah, please do.
All right, Honk, get us out of here.
Well, I have two almost kind of somber ones, but they're one is our prayers. They go out to Husker great Adam Carricker. He announced this week on his Carricker Chronicles that he's having heart surgery, which I believe he had this morning. So Adam, just want you to know, Redcast Nation, we're 100% behind you. We hope you have a quick and complete recovery. And the other one was, Dave, you mentioned I left the Denver a little early during the UNC game on Saturday, and I was heading over to a buddy's house in Northwest Iowa. And oh, this is interesting how this looks. I didn't think that would go over us like that. But anyways, I took a photo. I was driving through Goodland, Kansas, and I was like, well, this is where Brooke Maringer's was buried. And I was like, well, I want to go over and just pay our respects. And there's a photo there of that. And there's, they put up Husker stuff around it and everything. It's a neat little tribute that they have there. And it just got me thinking. I mean, one of the all-time greats, unbeaten. Obviously, that was the BTN special that they did on him, and it was kind of a touching moment, I guess, to just driving through there and wanting to stop and give our best regards there. So, That's that.
Absolutely. Very cool, Honk. Glad you were able to do that. All right, guys. Fun show. Enjoyed it. Looking forward to the interview with Tyler here tomorrow. For now, let's call that a Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
GBR.